What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN's The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, The Spoilercast. I'll be your host, Damon Hatfield. I'm joined today the Damon Hatfield by the Sean Finnegan,
Hello.
the Steve Butts, and the Sam Claiborne. Obviously, we've all seen the movie, the latest Hobbit movie.
Obviously, twice.
And 75% of us have read the book. I have not read the book, but I am a big fan of Peter Jackson's movies.
I told you could have read it this morning.
I know. It's really short.
It's a very easy read.
So first off, what did we think of the movie?
I thought it was a country mile better than the first one.
Country Mile.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big improvement, but I wasn't blown away by it.
Really?
Yeah. I thought it was enjoyable.
No, did you see it with us?
I did.
Okay. We should let people know that we saw it as a team.
group, as a family.
Yeah, see it early.
I'll say that I liked it better too. I don't know if that means that the movie was better or if just that my expectations have been recalibrated after The Unexpected Journey, which I did not like as much as a lot of other people did.
Yeah.
People seem to have levied the same criticism against Fellowship, is that it's the slower of the three because it's the entry. So maybe that's to be said of this trilogy.
Nope.
But
My complaints about that movie were not that it was too slow.
No, I mean, I'm not saying you specifically, but a lot of people seem to think that there's a lot of story sort of
Non-Tolkien fans would think that about all of the movies, I think.
Yeah.
Except for maybe this one, which was the most action-packed movie
For me,
out of all five so far.
Yeah, my main problem with it was that I felt like the tone wasn't consistent with what I wanted. But as always, like the world building and the visual design, it's just phenomenal. Like it's worth it just to watch the images go by.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Tolkien and Peter Jackson,
right.
he really can't do wrong in these movies.
Sure.
If you're at that level, which I am, and I know we probably all are in this
Absolutely.
group. But I could tell that it was not that great of a movie. It had some really poorly delivered dialogue. It just
You're
had
talking about the first one, or
no? This is the new one.
Oh, okay.
But I think this all could apply to the first one too. But any scene with Tauriel or added Legolas stuff, he was really distracting. By the way, I thought his face just looked completely weird.
I thought he was pretty badass.
Yeah.
Maybe even more badass than in The Lord of the Rings.
I like Legolas. I even liked the Tauriel stuff. The love triangle thing was a little sort of tacked on, but I actually liked it because it was a part of the movie where I thought, like, oh, this part of the movie is about something.
I thought a lot of people
scenes.
kind of told people what they were doing, and that was the dialogue in this movie. Right. It was like, I'm going to kill the dragon.
Yeah, it's very...
that's what most of the lines were about towards the end, and that's because it's an action movie, and what else are they going to talk about? But that did not make the movie a bad movie to me. Or it didn't make it unenjoyable. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, let's talk about this. So, like, for me, for a movie called The Hobbit, there was not a lot of Hobbit in this movie. It seems like it was all about the dwarves or Tauriel or, like, all this other stuff. And when we finally get that moment with Bilbo and Smaug, and I say Smaug, I'm sorry, I just do.
I always did.
We'll say everything. I'm sure.
Smaug sounds
like, that was real to me. Like, and that combined, like, oh, there's actually some, like, narrative content here, and there's also got, like, the great visuals. So for me, I really like that, even though it diverged greatly from what happened in the books.
Yeah, Stephen Colbert, the world's biggest Tolkien fan, said the Golem scene in the first movie is as good or better as anything in the first three movies.
That's a fantastic scene.
And it's just so well done. And I think Smaug's not as good as that, but it just shows that Martin Freeman's scenes as Bilbo are just perfect.
Yeah,
he's great at that.
And he's with Benedict Cumberbatch, and those guys are great in the Sherlock series.
Yeah, they have chemistry. Although you got to wonder how much chemistry did they have in the setup of green screens and crazy effects, and did they ever even see each other?
right.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the filming process.
Maybe he had like a big plastic dragon hat on.
Well, he did mocap for the entire performance, apparently, right?
Yeah, have you seen that there's that screenshot of him making this crazy face that looks very dragon-like.
Which is the same thing that they did for Gollum, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have the little balls on his faces and stuff, and the drawings. Yeah. It's his face. I mean, how much of that actually shows up in the final render of the dragon?
Like Gollum in that sense.
You can't look at the dragon's face and be like, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah,
the dragon had a significantly reptilian dragon-y face. I was wondering if they would make him more acting, like an actor, but he looked like Smaug looks like the dragon, and he does anytime you see in the Hobbit. Actually, technically a wyvern, right? Did you guys see that crazy internet argument?
I haven't seen that.
So dragons, they have the little Tyrannosaurus arms in front.
Really?
Sometimes they're big enough for them to crawl around and stuff. And in the first Hobbit movie, if you watch the original theatrical edition, there's a scene where Smaug's pounding down a hallway with those forelimbs. But they actually went back for the Blu-ray and changed it, and they webbed them up. Because, as you'll notice in the movie, he has big wings, which is claws on the ends of his wings. They're not separate. There's not wings and arms.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I learned so much from you just now. That was amazing.
Wyverns. New every day, yeah.
That's what. So a wyvern has the wing with the claws on it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You didn't learn it from me. You learned it
I absolutely learned that from you. I absolutely learned that from you.
Thanks, Internet.
Yeah, you get credit for that one.
So the movie opens with a flashback to the village of Bree. and the Prancing Pony.
It was nice. I actually liked
that. Lord of the Rings movies.
It definitely got me in the mood. I think for people who hadn't read the book, like it tells you, hey, this is why you need to care about what's happening.
So that's covered in where you can access it as would be in the Unfinished Tales, a large compendium of extraneous Tolkien writing, kind of like the appendices in Return of the King. There's a long description of how Gandalf came to find Thorin and set up the quest and came up with the idea of involving Bilbo. Now, this is interesting because in that little segment, it's like 7 pages. It's really cool to read. But he's actually telling it to, I think, Gimli and Merry and one other person in Minas Tirith in the end of Return of the King. So it's actually an excerpt from that where he's talking about how this all started. It's a really cool chapter. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's really cool. But then I heard in the commentary on the recent Blu-ray edition of The Hobbit that they might not have access to those stories, and I think they don't have the rights, strangely, to the appendices stuff. But that scene is definitely at least inspired by that. They meet, I think at the Prancing Pony, and that's the first time they meet. So that's all stuff that I was expecting to see in the movies until I heard that they might not be allowed to be in them.
Now, I had heard that somewhere in the appendices or all the supplemental material that it's hinted at or suggested that Gandalf thinks that Sauron might be coming back, or the necromancer sort of threat is returning, and he's worried that this guy is going to use Smaug, and that he uses Thorin as an excuse to go nuke Smaug.
Yeah, that's right. He thinks that if Sauron can use Smaug to destroy whole towns, it's just like Game of Thrones. It's like it's the dragon as a super weapon idea. And that's really cool. So he kind of he also wants to know if he's still there. Right. They don't even know that. Right. So he figures at the very least that they can send these dwarves there to kind of see if he's there or not. It all seems kind of a bad plan.
It makes Gandalf's motivation a little more complex, though. Like suddenly I'm there's a little more going on here than just meets the eye.
Yeah. And they play off that. Did you notice in this movie there's no White Council stuff, though? So, Gandalf goes on his mission to Dol Guldur and, breaks in there and shines his little light sphere around, which I thought looked really cool, but some people really didn't like that.
There's a lot more Gandalf being a wizard in this movie than there was in the first trilogy, that's for sure.
Did you guys have problems with the visuals in that, with Sauron? I thought that the eye Sauron standing up body pupil thing was the coolest. That was the most Peter Jackson moment of the movie for me.
And the sparkling darkness or whatever. It sort of radiates and is all shifting.
That
was well done.
You get a much better sense of Sauron as a person or a being when that sequence happens, as opposed to in the first 3 films, you kind of just get that he is the tower. He's obviously the eye, but he's disembodied.
If you go back now, will we be able to see any of that, body
I wonder,
in the eye?
Well, it's in the very beginning of Fellowship, right? They show the battle.
Yeah, where he's in his
so that's the model for him. But I'm just saying, whenever they show the flash of the burning eye, now that you can see his body in there, I think that's so cool. That was added for this. So,
so that sequence did create some consistency problems for me with the overall narrative, right? We were talking before about how when you watch the Star Wars prequels and then go back and watch the original trilogy, suddenly you think Obi-Wan Kenobi is kind of stupid, right? Some of the decisions they make. Yeah, I wonder if I'm starting to get that impression about Gandalf from this movie that he knew this horrible thing was about to happen, and then he does nothing.
He's already faced Sauron now at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring,
and then he shows up with a bunch of fireworks and is surprised at oh my gosh, something's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah. I
had some problems with that. Was I the only one?
No, I think the movie, I wonder if it's just a problem with conveying the storyline of Gandalf, because in the books it seems, at least when I read them when I was a kid, that there was very clearly a goal with what Gandalf was doing, and he kind of perceives the narrative a lot larger, on a bigger scope than all the other characters. He kind of understands things that are foreboding, where the characters are kind of all on their little missions, and he has this sort of grander understanding. And I just wonder if maybe a little bit of that was miscommunicated in the movie, which is maybe what it feels like, but I felt it was justified. He knows going into that scene where he sort of confronts Sauron that he's going there with a suspicion, knowing that it might be a trap.
It's also kind of funny because it parallels too closely his being captured by Saruman in Fellowship of the Ring, where he goes there without really realizing he's going to
save him again.
Right.
Yeah, is he going to be on top of the Tower of Dol Guldur? It's hard to tell. Right. The timeline is completely different in that from the appendices, in which he's been at Dol Guldur years before that. He finds the map and the key, gives to Thorin there. It's a completely different setup. So we'll see where this goes. I don't know if it's meant to kind of set up just a perspective so we can see the armies flowing out of there for the Battle of Five Armies, which is going to be in the next movie. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
That's the whole movie.
I think Galadriel is involved in chasing Sauron out of Dol Guldur. So she's probably going to end up going in there to save him, which is kind of a cool setup. I think that would be cool.
Mind that.
I hope that happens. But yeah, to see him get ballyhooed twice is kind of strange, right?
I also didn't mind Legolas showing up again with the Wood Elves, right? Like, it made sense for them to bring that character back, even though he's not part of
it. You guys weren't distracted by how he looked? I thought he looked like the kind of he had the Tron thing going on where they redid his face.
Right.
The CG. He didn't. Yeah.
What is the Tron thing?
Jeff Bridges, young Jeff Bridges and Tron Legacy.
Right.
Oh, they did the same thing in Looper too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that was like makeup, right?
Yeah.
Is it just makeup and that's not CG? Yeah, I just thought he looked like an older actor. A more distinguished older actor, and he's more built up, and his jawline was like really out of fire.
So my main problem with it wasn't the effects or the visuals or sort of the convenient storytelling elements. It's just that, like the first movie, there was no menace in it, right? Like they try to make you feel like these characters are in danger, and then they're just absolute ass kickers at every opportunity. When Bilbo saves them from the spiders, and then suddenly they just like wreck shit everywhere with these spiders, you feel like, how did you get captured in the first place? Because the 13 of you just basically owned all these spiders, and you did the same thing with the orcs and the barrels, where it's like a fat dwarf in a barrel just rolling down a hill takes out like 40 of these like seasoned warriors that they built up to like be this huge credible
It's
threat.
like Uncharted, right?
Although that sequence is like worth the whole first movie by itself.
It's a great gag. It's such a well done gag. I love that part.
I could hear Ransky giggling across the whole theater.
It being a gag is kind of a problem for me too, though, right? Like they kill the Goblin King in Unexpected Journey, and like it's a joke. And so here it's like, oh, you're in real danger. Nope, it's a joke because a fat dwarf in a barrel like bumps out and like kills these guys. And while it's cool, it seems to undercut what I felt like they've been trying to build all along, which is that these guys are in danger, and if they don't do something, they could die at any second.
Yeah. And the world would suffer a fate at the dragon.
And then they bust into Bard's house, right? And his kids beat up an orc, and you're like, okay, like, I don't even understand what's going on anymore.
Yeah. Sean, that barrel sequence was amazing. The camera's like halfway underwater.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I thought. I actually wanted to bring this up to you guys because it struck me as something horribly out of place. But there's GoPro footage in that sequence. Did anyone else notice that? Besides me?
Yeah. So, or it's meant to look like that to have that effect. Sure. So what it is it's cameras drowning.
Yeah.
It's like they're actually pixelating out.
Yeah. For those of you
really interesting.
For those of you not familiar, GoPros are those $400 cameras that people stick on their helmets and stuff.
Which I've used in that same situation. I was in a barrel.
They're amazingly
If you go in the ocean, you take those, and that's exactly what it looks like. It's like they get water, but these were going black as soon as it looked like they were killing cameras. I don't know. Like just throwing cameras in the water.
It really kind of distracted me because for me as a cameraman, that's footage that is unmistakable. Like I can look at that footage and spot it out of 99 times out of 100, and to see it pop up in what is essentially a $250 million movie is like. It struck me as
and they cut it in so it was nice, like panoramic footage, and then like that would just be the foamy going underwater part, right? That's what it was. It was really strange.
It really stuck out to me. Yeah. But I find it really interesting that no one else noticed it.
I'm glad you said that because something did seem different about that, but I didn't know what it was. You just explained it.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder why they would have done that. It's very interesting to me as a filmmaker.
If it's the idea that if you watch somebody's GoPro videos, you understand when, or if you watch Mythbusters and they destroy a camera, we kind of know what that looks like. So they're kind of showing, that it makes it almost adds realism to it because there's a camera there that, if in this situation, if there was a real camera there, it's not CG, it's getting nailed by what happens.
I mean, to me, it would be something similar to what Steven Spielberg did at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, right? Like the visual sort of format of that was meant to convey something, and maybe he's doing that because people have a reference now for understanding.
And that's kind of what I wanted to
I kind of
want to piggyback on your thing. You mentioned adding realism to it. That seems to fit in tonally with what he's been trying to do in terms of the visual style. We talk about, 3D and HFR, which we didn't see it, or at least I didn't see it in high frame rate.
I've seen it twice now, and I haven't seen it in HFR yet.
Right, so
kind of curious.
I mean, I saw the first one in HFR after seeing it in regular.
Me too.
2D, 24 frames. Yeah, so distracting. I hate it so much, but it does add realism to the movie, and I wonder if adding GoPro footage to kind of put us in the water with the dwarves is part of that sort of approach.
There's a lot more decapitation in this one.
For the place.
Orcs being decapitated left and right.
That's awesome.
Comedic decapitation, and they can't show blood because it's PG-13.
You said the black orc blood, right?
Black orc blood,
yeah. That's barely even that. So strange, right? Like it does.
Well, nobody gets hurt. Like Keeley barely gets hurt. And that's kind of dumb. It's like, he was a Morgul blade. That's kind of like when they put out a Star Wars game and they have to have a boss, so they put a Rancor in it. Like, this is a big universe. You don't have to use a Morgul blade for everything. That bugs me so much. It contracts the universe when you do stuff like that. And I think the same thing when they found the blade in the first Hobbit movie, and it's like, that's supposed to be the same one that stabs Frodo later. It's like, this is a big... There's a lot of swords here.
It's been a while since I've read The Hobbit. I read it when I was a kid, but what struck me was really interesting is during that spider sequence, you mentioned the blade, and I thought of Sting and how he named Sting after stabbing the spider because he can hear it saying that.
How cool was that?
That is really cool. But is that something that was not in the books?
In fact, I just read that part about 20 minutes ago, and it was really funny because he just, before he even goes into anything, is like, I'm going to have to give you a name. I'm going to call you Stink. That's what the line is.
That's how it happens, yeah.
So they changed that you're like just constantly reading The Hobbit.
Well, I want to read the forest scene specifically because it's a long chapter, and it's definitely one of the longest time-wise segments in the Hobbit book. Right. They're lost for many days. It's a huge geographical area. It's supposed to be pitch black. They can't even see, so I don't know how they're going to get through the forest. But they don't have trouble because they're getting lost necessarily. They have trouble because they're starving to death.
Right.
And that was completely changed for the better because it made it a nice action sequence in the woods. Right. It's completely different. Of course, there's that famous part where Bomber gets falls in the river and then drinks a bunch of the water that they say not to drink, and he passes out, and they have to carry him for a lot of the book. And I thought that would have been really cool to have in this movie, but instead they had to have him pop out of that barrel and chop away,
which was really cool.
It was funny. It's also like there's I think they said of the original Fellowship of the Ring movie that there's a line in the script that says they run down some stairs in Moria, and like Peter Jackson made like this gigantic spectacle out of it with the stairs falling and everything, and it was just a little 2 lines in the script. And I think they did that with this movie because in The Hobbit, when they get in the barrels, they just get in the barrels and leave, right? They just escape and that's it. And when Bilbo confronts Smaug, like he just says hi to him basically and sees he doesn't have like the gold coins covering one part of his breast and walks out, right? And that's all that happens. But Peter Jackson really went to town with both of those sequences.
Did you notice Peter Jackson's cameo?
At the very beginning.
He walks out and like takes a toke of a pipe or something like that, and then walks away, or he eats something.
He's eating a carrot.
There you go. Yeah, something.
That was nice. For me,
I was wondering if his kids are in this movie too.
Yeah, it's Bard's daughters.
Is it Bard's daughters?
Yeah,
okay.
At least one of them is Peter Jackson's daughter.
Of course.
So you guys saw the Stephen Colbert thing, right? Where he's supposed to be in this movie. Is that a joke or is that an actual thing?
I didn't see him if he was.
He's supposed to be in one of the movies, but I don't remember.
Yeah, there's an interview that's going around on the internet where he mentions that he doesn't want to give away who he is, but he is somewhere in this movie, The Desolation of Smaug. And I didn't spot him, but I wasn't really looking. I wonder if anyone else... it may totally be a fabrication. This is Stephen Colbert, so...
I will say, I really like the introduction of Stephen Fry's character, like the Master of Lake Town. I thought that was really clever. He's not in the books at all.
That's what I thought, yeah.
He just makes some decisions in the background, and the Bard takes over his position. Yeah, I think that conflict was... I don't know. We'll see what they do with it.
It was good. The guy with him was a little worm-tonguey, and I was like, I kind of saw that before.
Again, there's like the prototype worm-tonguey. I don't know why this keeps happening.
It's crazy.
What did you think about Bjorn?
That seemed like an extra scene for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it, but it could have been on Blu-ray.
Yeah. I wonder if... I mean, he comes back for the next movie, right?
No.
Doesn't he come and help him with the battle? At the
Bjornings might show up there.
Yeah, Sam tomorrow when he's read that part again.
Yeah, exactly.
That part didn't seem entirely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little... It was extra, and it was another thing that like had nothing to do with the Hobbit himself, so I could have done without it.
Yeah, I think it would have been kind of interesting if he was more human-like instead of like I'm a big bear thing that has to still talk like a bear. Like I didn't like that too much. I thought it was funny. So when they first show Beorn, he's a bear leaning up against a rock like dogs do when they pee on things sometimes. And I thought Bilbo was just looking at one of the damn wargs because it didn't look like anything
that
different, and you couldn't tell. Like the size wasn't demonstrated very well. But I like how he looked eventually. But yeah. I like the big bees.
The big bees are cool.
When he wakes up and
that terrified me. Oh, I hate bees, and when it lands on him and it's like this big,
it's because he's a hobbit and they're big bees. I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
it's clever.
What do you think of the romance between Keely and
Tauriel? Weird.
I kind of liked it.
It didn't bother me.
It felt very out of place to me. Like, I get that the movie is supposed to be, or the trilogy is supposed to be a little bit more whimsical than foreboding in terms of its relation to the next trilogy, or I guess the previous trilogy, depending on how you want to set it up. But as much as both characters were really good, I felt like that interest was kind of weird. The only part that really struck out to me was in the end when he doesn't believe that it's her who's there saving him. Like I thought that was pretty cool.
I didn't think that those lines were delivered very well. I was really annoyed by that part. I will say that they did this also before in Lord of the Rings with Gimli and Legolas. So. We've already seen the dwarf elf love.
Oh, interspecies bromance.
Romance.
Pretty racist book if you think about it.
I don't. Without Tauriel being in this movie, completely added fabricated character for it and for that adaptation. I don't think there's any lines of female dialogue in The Hobbit.
I mean, that's why they had to add it, right? Like, there's just no female characters.
Unless Smaug's
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I mean, the book is super masculine, right? There's very, very few scenes for women in the book. So, I mean, even the Arwen stuff in Lord of the Rings was brought in from something that's not the actual trilogy.
Yeah, but a lot closer to. I mean, Arwen does end up marrying Aragorn, so that's all in line. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind the love triangle. I thought it actually added kind of a human element that I could actually get involved in.
It's weird that the dwarves are left behind. That kind of shook me.
Yeah.
There are like four of them that
didn't go to the Lonely Mountain.
Yeah.
Does that happen in the book? I can't remember.
No.
Yeah.
The ending of this movie is very different than the same sequence in the book, right? Because like I said, Bilbo goes in, confronts Smaug, and sort of like through stroking his vanity gets him to like rear up and like he sees... in the book, he's been laying in the gold coin so long that he's covered in gold, basically, and that's his armor. This whole thing about like the previous guy shot a scale off is not in the book. And then Bilbo just basically goes out and tells the dwarves, and I don't even think they tell Bard, right? Like a bird hears him and flies off to tell Bard, completely separately from the dwarves and the Hobbit.
Yeah, but Smaug goes out and he goes to attack Lake Town, but they don't have to. The dwarves never see him. They're just like, he's gone. Let's take our stuff.
Sweet.
They're really happy about it. But that makes enmity between them and Lake Town because they're like, what the hell? You chased out the dragon, and then they kind of wall up the opening, and they're just like, yeah, see ya, deal with them.
Right.
So maybe I'm sure they'll still do that actually.
Right.
But.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up? I like the movie a lot. I think it's better than the first one. Even though recognizing the faults that it has, I choose to ignore them because I just like that world so much. And
I feel the exact same way. I didn't describe it any better. I don't feel that way about any other movies. I was trying to think of an example, but Star Wars ruined my life. The Phantom Menace. So
there's that. Yeah.
It's just not the same. I don't know why. Maybe Star Wars Episode 7.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the world building and the effects, like, it's worth it just to see that. Yeah. And there was less for me to get involved in emotionally or from a standpoint of, like, narrative engagement in this movie. But I like this one better, like I said, maybe not because it's a better movie, but because my expectations have been kind of set at a little more reasonable level based on Unexpected Journey. Yeah.
I certainly liked it. I don't think that it stands up in terms of quality or in terms of its like thematic resonance to the first trilogy. But like you said, it is very much in and of itself a spectacle. It's worth seeing because it's different than anything else that's out there. And it is very enjoyable nonetheless. Like, I think there's something to be said about knowing where the story is going to go. Going back to what you were saying, like, maybe that has some part to play in why we don't feel like these characters are really in any danger. Because we've seen where most of them end up. But you're right, like, no one makes movies like this. They stand out very differently than anything else that's coming out, as we're seeing just on that basis alone.
Yeah,
I feel like the Smaug and the Golem scenes being so good, like those are going to be the heights of this this trilogy. I like not knowing what the heck they're going to do in the third movie besides having a bunch of armies battle. Like, is there going to be bridge material? I'm really, really curious about that. Yeah. But then how does that work cinematically? Because then you have a big battle, 10 battles in the beginning, it's going to seem like, and then what happens for the remaining 3 hours? We'll see.
Just cut back and forth between the two sequences. I'm guessing.
We'll find out in 12 months.
Yeah,
I guess.
Can't wait.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to our Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug Spoilercast. For all your entertainment needs, we've got you covered here at IGN.